I know top of my head that brand and content is the thing to protect. That the things that are evergreen are the things to protect. I would now say, like, if you are engaging a community of your audience, then make sure that is top of mind too. But you can dial performance up and down, but like having that brand behind you and a narrative and an audience mean, like, without it, then nothing else you can do on top of that won't perform.
B2B Marketers Off the Record, sponsored by Headley Media, for honest, practical conversations about what's really working in B2B marketing. So welcome to B2B Marketers Off the Record. I'm so excited to be joined today by Amber Carnegie. Thank you for coming and joining us. Amber is the Community Marketing Manager at Better B2B. And would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, without sort of a too long don't read version, I've been working in marketing for over a decade now, across everything from content and search to digital strategy, both in-house and in agency across B2C and B2B. So a lot of history there, but really my passion is in turning sort of complex ideas into great stories and engagement. My advocacy for community sort of was happening alongside my career, which has then made me quite passionate about creating a space for B2B marketers to sort of come together and learn and develop. And that is sort of where I've led myself into Better B2B and creating that and growing that network. So sort of combining my history in marketing with that and doing that. And then on my sort of side hustles, I love doing things that are creative. So I do a lot of for the community. I do book clubs, I do creative writing workshops, I interview authors for Waterstones, and I also run immersive TV and film events, so I don't like to stay still, essentially.
Wow, that's a lot. You pack a lot into your time, and that's one of the reasons why I was so excited. I was like, we have to get Amber on. There's just so much there that we need to unpack. So with that in mind, why don't we like to kick off with a fun one? Which is, tell me, without telling me, that you've been in B2B marketing for many years. So
we're laughing about this because we originally started, just for context of people listening, about Clippy in Word. But when you asked me that question just now, the first thing that came to my head is that we are so used to things like Dropbox, we transfer Google Drive now. I actually remember it being quicker as an intern to be sent in taxis with USBs of photographs or CDs of photographs to send to a designer. But also I remember when who does the images, like Giphy.
Yeah.
I remember when those used to be in folders and you would go through an index.
Giphy. Yes.
And then you'd be like, okay, I need this CD with this photo, and then you'd go find it. So if you needed stock imagery, that's how we used to find it. So that's how old I am.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're like unlocking so much for me. I feel like this is going to happen every time as we're recording the episodes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's so many things that you just sort of pack away in your memory, and like press packs we used to do with there were CDs and then USBs, like print out, like in a whole physical thing that I guess you just wouldn't do anymore. That's just
no. And like now we laugh at terrible stock imagery, but that's all we had then. Like you'd search for like people in meeting room and like go find the CD. So
yeah,
that's what you got.
Amazing. So how did you start out in marketing? How did you get into this?
I'll try again, do a too long don't read version. As I think a lot of people I meet in marketing, I was meant to be going to study economics at university, and then I ended up getting an internship and working in London for a lads mag, which I won't name, and I'm much more of a feminist now and would never do such things these days, but ended up spending a lot of time there and getting published quite a lot, and was like, right, no, I'm going to go off to university and do English. And as many English graduates go, we all end up working in marketing. Went from university to working for a magazine and marketing company in China, so ended up being there for a few years, and they were sort of helping Western brands launch themselves into Asian markets. And from there I came back to the UK and ended up working at RS Components, massive B2B company, as we all know. And when I was working there, I was actually a buyer in semiconductors, and every week the higher ups would be like, you should be in marketing really, because I was doing all these internal comms events and I was doing loads of things. And eventually went, oh yeah, I should probably work in marketing. So I ended up actually getting a job at a brewery in marketing. They took me on, and all of this was through side hustle work that I proved myself on. I ended up working at a brewery for several years and absolutely loved it, and a gin distillery, doing all that. And it was sort of part of the gin boom as well. So absolutely some fun years. From there, I ended up moving into the B2B space, which was actually in tattoo supplies. Strangely, okay. So tattoo supplies, veterinary supplies, medical. But one of my favourite things about learning that B2B journey was actually, I spent the whole time going, but our customers are still in the customer space, so why do we have to attribute us as a B2B business all the time? So this was always like in the back of my head. And then from there, I stepped into agency life and never looked back. So yeah, ended up going into a startup agency for a couple of years and doing some amazing campaigns there. Then moved into a very large, I think second largest agency in the world. And then with that, I was sort of missing that humanity, that connection, getting to do really cool stuff, and stepped into a smaller agency. And now I'm having the time of my life, running Better B2B and getting to do this and connect with marketers, which is my favourite part of marketing, I think. So tried to do the too long don't read version, but basically if people tell you should work in marketing, you probably should.
Oh my gosh, we love a long story like that. I think it's that most people in marketing have this kind of, well, I fell into it, and yes. I can definitely relate, English language graduate here, so that's marketing has its draws for many of us, but yeah, it sounds like absolutely you've had the side hustles, fingers in many pies, and I think that's just perfect, especially from that community side of things, and you've just got that relational aspect throughout your career. So with that in mind, what's one belief about B2B marketing you've changed your mind on in the last 12 months?
I feel like people might come for me, but I think there are just too many assumptions around B2B marketing being inherently dull. And I see these like posts all the time or events all the time. And what I think we often mean to say is that we're seeking clarity within these industries. They're really like, a lot of B2B is really complex with like deep needs problems and like products even. And I think what we actually need to be saying is being more accessible rather than not dull. So there's a lot of talk around like B2B doesn't need to be boring, which is the thing that I think people will come for me for. And I agree with it in principle, but I think it's often misinterpreted for like being loud and like taking on new colorways, completely changing your brand up, or like being attention grabbing for irrelevant reasons when it might not like align with business values. So I feel like for me, I've shifted more towards the idea of differentiation and like following emotion more than boring. So more like being different, like not being different visually, but like being meaningfully distinct in how a brand like thinks or like shows up or speaks. So yeah, B2B doesn't need to be boring, but it's still really complex. And in that context, brands, I think, need to be more clear, trusted, like distinctive. So you're actually like just cutting through the noise rather than being the loudest person in the room. So yeah, I think it was a hard one for me to come to terms with, because I'm all for being creative and weird. Yes. But actually, it's not always the right thing.
No, and I think it ties back to something you said initially, which is about the storytelling. Like if that is clear, that it doesn't mean that you have to do it in an extravagant way, but it's about, the messaging and focusing on what you're saying being different and bold and, different to your competitors and standing out. And just because we're in B2B doesn't mean that we have to make it dull or make it the same as our competitors, or just because that's what we feel will be accepted. Especially now, and the amount that we have access to, there's just so many different ways to do that, I suppose. What shifts are you seeing in how B2B buyers are behaving right now?
I don't think I'll be the only person that ever says this, but for me, it's that before buyers would reach sales and they'd have all these questions and concerns, and I actually think now, before they even fill in a form or book a demo, they're already 80% way through their decision making, and we're just formalizing that. I think the traditional buying funnels being compressed is probably the best way to say it. And I actually think people are forming all their opinions from content, peers, communities, forums, short form video, things like that before they even come to us as a qualified lead, essentially. And I think
Yeah.
before that we were putting a lot more on the other side of that journey, and we should be changing that around. So I think by the time they're already in the funnel, most of the journey's happened, and I think that's
Yeah.
been a really big shift in the past 18 months at least, and I think we're still catching up with it.
Yeah, it's really hard for marketers, isn't it? There's kind of, especially with AI and how people are searching and finding, like exactly to your point, they're doing all of that research before they're even making contact. So we do have to turn to things that marketers like less, like, the less trackable things that happen in communities, which is exactly where you're at, and the kind of work that you're doing is nurturing those communities. And I'm sure even within what you've created, there's the referral systems, and like people asking for help and other people pointing them in the right direction, and all of that being completely untrackable, untraceable, really. But ultimately, really important, and will be a key driver for some people, and for many businesses, really.
You'd hope, but then we can't track it, so can we validate it? It's so tough, isn't it?
Really hard, but the moment that that's taken away, and then there's not this source of revenue, is just how I mean, things are going dark. It's a difficult time out here for B2B marketers, for sure. So what is a strategic bet you think more marketing leaders will need to make over the next kind of couple of years?
So I briefly touched on it, but I have like a big period of my background was in digital PR, and it was a shift that we saw a few years ago, and I think it's a shift that is happening, but B2B is maybe a bit slower to get to it just because of compliance and stakeholders, etc. But I think we're seeing a shift in how we strategize and budget. I think we're moving from like big campaign led marketing to actually having an always on building process, and then layering those campaigns on top. And I think this isn't, like I said, just coming in the next couple of years. We're already in it, but with like all these layers of sign off, I think in B2B we really need to get ahead of it now while it's still fully landing within the industries. I think instead of like focusing primarily on like individual launches or short-term events and things like that, I think we need to have this constant presence building. And I think that leads back to like content, community and thought leadership. And I know a lot of teams are trying to work on team advocacy. And I think all of this will then lead to that sort of buyer journey that we talked about, where people are going to have demand and trust before they even know they need it, essentially. But by the time a buyer is ready to act, like that decision of influence has already happened. So it's kind of a concerning area where actually could they have been influenced before that campaign even lands? So should we be changing up our strategy already? But I do think the education around that change of strategy style is going to be the harder thing to do in better B2B.
That's really interesting, and it opens up a whole new avenue of messaging and strategy and how we reach our buyers. It's also around, the messaging part is really interesting there, because it's like, what are we always saying that's not just our USPs? It's going to be boring and dull B2B. There needs to be those kind of the storytelling that is always true, that always relates to the buyer, the always on piece. And then it's thinking, okay, well, how and who? Like, is it could, because especially in our world where we work in B2B tech, we know that the buying committee is expanding, so those people need different messaging, all of that, there's a lot of kind of different, okay, what tactics are we using, what messaging are we using? But it makes a lot of sense saying that, well, they need an always on approach. It makes so much sense.
And I don't know how we're going to turn a plan for that, because again, there's so many layers of sign off and things like that. So actually saying we're going to do this many different types of content for this many different people who are in that process, it's quite a long process, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's an exciting place to be.
It is. It definitely is. There's so much change happening all of the time. Yeah. So what type of investment should marketing leaders protect, even if budgets are tightened. Now, I feel like you're going to be like, community, like I'm asking a community marketing manager this question, but
it's not actually what I was thinking, which is
oh,
I don't
okay.
know, is that terrible? I was more thinking, like, I've been in this game long enough to know marketing always goes first, and I think I've seen it happen that many times that I know top of my head that brand and content is the thing to protect. That the things that are evergreen are the things to protect. I would now say, like, if you are engaging a community of your audience, then make sure that is top of mind too. But you can dial performance up and down, but like having that brand behind you and a narrative and an audience mean, like, without it, then nothing else you can do on top of that won't perform. So I think you need, like, I would say that if you are having to tighten budgets, keep brand at heart. And those like fundamental areas that if you lose them, you could be paying more in the long run to fix them. So yeah, it's really tough, isn't it? Because marketing is always going to take the hit first, and we know that. But what's even tougher is that is an area that isn't easy to measure.
No,
So it's
certainly.
harder.
It's the age-old problem, isn't it? Where are the numbers on brand return, and quantifying the reach and how big a brand is a huge kind of project in and of itself. But you're right, it takes a long time to build a brand. So when that budget is cut, it can drop quickly, but to build it back up again is going to take, again, another however long time to build the brand. And what is one thing you wish you could change about marketing if you could?
Kind of going on from my point about brand is that, like, in this day and age, we're expected to track everything or attach value to at least something. And I understand why, like, but what I miss is like that humanity in marketing, and it's something else that kind of draws me to the community side of things as well. Like, I sometimes feel like marketing has been reduced to a process, and when actually the marketing that we connect with and admire most is marketing that stays with us. It's work that really sits with us, and ironically that's what really drives growth. So yeah, something just deeper in the heart of marketing, that's what I'd really like to get back to, and communicating sort of the real principles and values of brands by tapping into that emotion again. Probably not a straight answer, but that's kind of what I wish we could get back to sometimes, or remember that we can do those things, and everything doesn't need to be a process and doesn't need to have that value attached to it. Sometimes we need a little bit of risk.
It is hard. Yeah, I think marketing in general has a fine line to walk, doesn't it? It's all about balance of proving that what you're doing is you're walking the right walk, and talking the right talk, and that there is some revenue associated, there's some sort of trail back to the business, to be able to prove the function works. But if there's too much focus on that side of things, it is often to the detriment of brand and the awareness side of things, which is not. Yeah, they're two parts of the same puzzle, aren't they? So absolutely, and I think what you're saying is almost let's go back to the basics. That's kind of like as you would be learning marketing and reading through books about strategy and pricing, and brand is central in all of those, and psychology, and building something, but those are very hard. Are very hard to track.
The things I love are usually the hardest. Yeah,
the hardest. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're into our final sort of couple of questions now, which is about who we should maybe bring on as a next guest. Is there anyone that you would recommend that we invite to speak, and why would that be?
So if she's not already planned, I would love to see you speak to Amy Watts.
Okay.
She is at the forefront of B2B social. I think she's really clear, but also very creative in how she produces work. And I think she's also an absolute joy to talk to. So she would be my shout out for someone that you could have on, or would be great to have here.
Amazing. Yeah, I have definitely seen some of her posts, keeping us all entertained. Perfect. Yeah, I can't wait. I'll definitely get her on the list. What's one question, whether it's that guest or not, what's one question you think we should pass on to the next guest to answer?
I should probably be like quite poignant here, or ask something really serious, but something that I always ask in job interviews is, and sometimes throws people off a little bit is what TV, film, or character do you most associate yourself with? And it's often a really good indicator of sort of character or how people see themselves.
Oh my
So yeah, that would
gosh.
be my question.
That's also one that nobody would ever be able to like prep for.
Yes.
He's like, who am I? Interestingly, I do want to know, I hope that you've thought about this for yourself. Who would be
So
your TV character?
I would go for Leslie Knope in Parks and Rec, is who I sort of see my values align with, her work ethic, just out of that energy. But in recent years, I've had a lot of comparisons to Ted Lasso, so he could sneak in there too.
Oh, okay. That's two different types of character.
Yes,
Gosh, I think I'm going to have to come back to mine. I
there
don't
you
think I
go.
could have one straight away. I think almost like you, there'll be two different ones, very different kind of working people. One probably quite scatty, and then one very focused, and like we've got to do this.
So yeah,
Like,
it's fun. It's a fun one to test, like sort of see who's in people's brains and sort of who they attest themselves to. So yeah, I like it.
amazing. It's been lovely chatting to you. And I actually think we could talk for ages on B2B marketing, speculating, and kind of digging into some of these things a bit more. But thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that some of these answers have been like just, the idea of the pod is just to kind of lift everything up and get people thinking a little bit wider than their day to day. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.